Welcome to Scrollin', a podcast about the Elder Scrolls Online. I'm Ket.
I'm Davius.
And this is episode number 19. This week on The Golden Vendor, we have Overwhelming Necklace, Ebon Necklace, Stygian Necklace, Necklace of the Weird Tree, and then for the monster sets, we have Vulcan Scoria's Shoulders and Alambris's Shoulders. And I think the two that are the kind of ones that stand out to me are the Overwhelming Surge Necklace. It's a Magicka DPS set. And I actually use this set on my Magicka Dragon Knight, so I think I'm going to snag one of these to put on her. But this is a really great set. So when you deal damage with a class ability, you have a 33% chance to proc this set to deal 1,040 shock damage to all enemies within 8 meters every 1 second for 6 seconds. And then 15% of that damage is returned to you as Magicka. And that can happen every 6 seconds. So you have a potential 100% uptime on this thing. And what's nice is that Magicka return scales with the amount of damage that you're doing. So the more enemies that are around, the more damage you're doing, the more Magicka you're getting back at the same time. So I put this on my Magicka Dragon Knight. She's also using Grothdar with Elfbane. And so Elfbane makes Grothdar have a potential 100% uptime as well. And on a Dragon Knight, Grothdar deals flame damage, which helps a Dragon Knight sustain as well. And it's also an 8-meter radius that follows you around. So they just overlap on top of each other super perfectly. Works really well. But really, this set would be great on just about any Magicka build.
That build you have is one of the better builds to have around for when we're going against Zergs or we're outnumbered. That thing can melt down large enemy groups real quick.
It's a lot of AoE damage. As long as I have a healer on me to kind of help keep me alive during that, because that's the one drawback of the build is it's pretty squishy. But yeah, it's a ton of AoE damage, and I use the Destro ult, Eye of the Storm, and that Elfbane set increases the duration of that as well. So it lasts like 12 seconds. So you have like all this time with all this AoE damage going around, and it is a lot. It is a lot. And then the Ebon Necklace. This is just kind of a standard bread and butter tank set. If you're putting a tank together and you don't know what sets to use, you really can't go wrong with Ebon. It just gives 1,000 extra health to yourself and up to 11 allies that are within 28 meters of you. So basically your whole raid group. So yeah, it's just pretty much every tank is going to have a set of this in their inventory and use it from time to time, I would say.
Yeah, this is a set that I'm actually, with Davius and his secondary tanking getting more and more prominent, this is a set that I think I'm going to have to get. Right now, his tank setup I think is great, but it's kind of, it's worked really well that it's kind of a selfish tank set. Like his stats are great and everything like that, but his buffs to the group aren't great. And, we've talked about that's a big part of the tank is making sure they're buffing the rest of the group. And so I think as I kind of continue making his little secondary tank setup more and more effective, switching to more group tanking and group buffing sets is going to be important.
Yeah, and PvE tanking, I mean, that's what it's all about. Once you have some tanking experience, you find that a lot of the time staying alive isn't really all that difficult. And so all these investments that you make in a survivability, you find you can let some of that stuff go and invest into more group utility. And what's nice about Ebon here is it does both. It applies to you and your group.
Yeah.
The rest, I think, Stygian, Weird Tree, not so interesting. Vulcan Scoria, always a great Magicka DPS set. And Alambris was buffed recently as well. I'm seeing that pop up a lot more recently, even in PvP. So really a pretty nice selection of stuff on the Golden this week.
It's good gold week.
Yep. Coffee sip time.
Well, if you're forcing me.
Yeah. Well, I edited out all the coffee sips. No big deal.
They're gone.
As far as news and patch notes and that sort of thing, it's, again, pretty slow this week, but there are a couple of press releases. So there's one titled Enter the Elder Scrolls Online Greymoor Home Decorating Contest. And I'll put a link to this in the description. But basically, just to celebrate the release of Greymoor, they're doing this home decorating contest, and it's going on now until July 3rd. And there are two different themes. You can make a vampire themed home or a Nord themed home. And you basically just submit a screenshot of what you put together, and they'll determine some winners. There'll be two grand prize winners and four runners up. And so the grand prize winners, these are actually some pretty intense rewards. So the grand prize awards are 21,000 crowns spent in the crown store, a house of your choice, and they say this includes previous limited time offers. So I guess just any house that they've ever offered before. You can just pick which one you want. There's a vampiric sovereign statue, a digital statue that you would put in your house, and it's actually really cool. I saw a preview of this thing, and it looks pretty amazing. You get the Elder Scrolls Online Greymoor Digital Collector's Edition, a vampiric libations bundle. I think that's some in-game package of some kind. And then a music box of your choice. And again, it includes any previous limited time offer. Man, that's just a big list of stuff.
It's a lot of stuff. That's a big old prize back.
Yeah. I'm especially like any house of your choice, any house that's ever been offered like that. I feel like that's pretty amazing right there.
Yeah. That'd be a tough choice too. I feel like you'd have to do some serious research to figure out like, all right, what's the coolest house, and also what's like the rarest house out there.
There was one that they had a while back. I think it was called something Pirates Cove, maybe, or something like that. It was like in a cave, and there was a boat in there, and looked amazing.
Is that the one you have to take the boat to actually get to it? Because I think I've seen that one. I think, or at least
maybe
I've previewed
so.
it.
I can't remember. I'm not. I can't remember how you get there. I just remember seeing like maybe a video of it or something that looked really cool. But I think that would be the one I would get.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the runner-up prizes is going to be 5,500 crowns, the Elder Scrolls Online Greymoor Digital Collector's Edition, and a music box of your choice, including any previous limited time offers. So much smaller award, but still good stuff. And then the only other press release this week is just a preview for the new Nightfall crown crates, which I don't really do the crown crate thing, but I did take a look, and gotta say there are some really cool things in there. It's just a shame that I'll probably never have any of them because I just don't mess with crates.
Yeah, there's always some cool stuff in there. I feel like one of the really cool things that they always put in there is the skins. Mm-hmm. I feel like it's really hard to get some of the new skins, and they always kind of sneak some really cool ones in there.
Yeah, that's where all the skins go. And man, they would have already gotten so much money from me if they would just sell them outright. You know, I would just pay money for the skins that I want, but I'm not going to do the crates. You know,
I gotta go back to this housing thing for a minute here. I think this is really cool. You know, we talked a little bit about this. It's interesting that the contest is based on just a screenshot.
Yeah, that's
a unique way. I feel like that there's so much more that goes into the design of a house, but you know, it makes sense. That's a lot of people going to be submitting this, and it's kind of a quick way to just have a really nice looking screenshot.
Yeah, that is though. I thought about that too, because it's like, you know, you can just compose a nice screenshot really easily, and the whole rest of your house, who knows what it looks like, you know. So,
part of me feels obligated to enter this contest for the Nord homestead part, right? Like it's Nord themed, it's housing.
Yeah, this is your time, dude.
I know. Maybe I'll put something together and submit just for fun.
I think you should.
I might
just see what happens. What's the worst that could happen?
What's the worst could happen, huh? That's a good point. I might do that. I like the idea that they do housing contests. I do think this is really, really cool of them to do. Even with the screenshot, it's a really cool kind of extra to add in. And those prizes, like we said, those prizes are ridiculous.
Dude, yeah. I mean, 21,000 crowns. It's a lot.
That's
a lot of
crowns.
All right. Well, I guess let's just move on. We'll talk a lot about what we've been up to this week. Davius, what have you been doing this week in the Elder Scrolls Online?
All right, so my main focus this week, and even going into last week, I've run into this conundrum with Davius. He's my main character. I feel like that I needed to kind of change him up a little bit. And so, last week I was talking crazy talk about he's going to be this DPS build now.
I lost my mind.
You were just blown away.
I couldn't sleep that night.
I do have good news. After still testing things out, doing some more grinding, Davius is official. He's still a pacifist.
Oh, good. Okay, good.
Everybody just calm down. He's still a full healing build. He uses the Sigic Order ability to where his light attacks heal, so he is still 100% a pacifist.
Okay.
And I worked a new setup with him. It's really kind of stuff that I talked about, but just didn't kind of work it all together. So the finalized setup on him that I've tested and it's worked really well is that he's doing Cold Harbor's favorite. And that's the one that summons the Guar Honor mount. It's a little tiny Guar. Mm-hmm. And it either blows up and does damage if you do damage, or if you heal, it procs and does an AoE heal. And with his setup, and he only doing heals, so I only get the healing proc of it. I did go ahead and put Winter's Respite on there, and that does that Frost healing circle. And then I stuck with the Chokethorn monster set just because that's such a strong heal. Tested this out. He's got fantastic heals, and it's just, with Davius, it's like he has to. I feel like that this is just who he is. I have to play this pacifist heal only style with him. It feels weird if I do anything else. But I was, kind of going through and struggling with figuring out what I wanted to do with him and the change. We talked about being a only heal is kind of difficult right now because it's really designed best for group battlegrounds. Yeah. And we do a lot of Imperial City, and Imperial City is a little tough if I don't have any damage. But I think a lot of my struggle with his actual build setup came from kind of these mythic items. I've kind of talked about in the past about how it's a real tough choice to add mythic items. And in my mind, I kind of, this is my main character. He's my first character. He's my favorite character. So I had subconsciously told myself I have to find a way to fit a mythic item on this character. And when I finally realized, it just doesn't work with his setup. There's just not a mythic item that works well with what I'm trying to do with him. It kind of cleared the fog. It was like, it's okay not to have a mythic item on this guy. It works a lot better without it.
It really is. And I think you made that point last week that the mythic items, they really are this perfect, they seem to be really well balanced where it's a tough choice if you actually want to use one or not. And I'm finding that to be true in a couple of my builds that I'll talk about here in a minute.
Yeah, it's just crazy. But yeah, once I decided no mythic item, I put this set together, and I'll talk about our Imperial City here in a minute. But took it into Imperial City. I was extremely happy with the results. The heals were still great. So he was most of my work this week is grinding him up, getting that new setup with him. I still have him in a 5-piece heavy set, so he's still really tanky. And just really, really strong heals. So he's the good old Davius, same old Davius, but actually even stronger heals than he's had before.
Good deal.
So he's a lot of fun. My other focus this week has been my Stam Warden. So just to kind of, we were talking a little bit about this to kind of segment off here. We were talking about how that, where we're at in this new expansion. Everybody's done kind of the main quest. Everybody's kind of done a lot of the antiquities. It's kind of falling back to where you're just doing antiquities kind of as a side for fun thing. And we've kind of talked the mode that we're in with the game right now is kind of, this is where you go in, you pick your character, and you tweak it to what the game looks like right now. And that's kind of what me and you have talked about. What we've kind of been doing is we're kind of going through each character now and tweaking and making the changes to make them best fit.
We're adapting to this meta.
Yeah. Which it's a really fun time because it's kind of, we always talk about how much we enjoy when we kind of go through characters and do slight updates. It kind of renews your interest in that specific character. That's definitely been the case for me with my Stamina Warden. That was the next, after I finished Davius, that was the next character that I kind of went to and started do some updates. He is he is a build that me and you joke about quite often. He is a heavy armor bow build.
Yeah, I love it. I love it so much.
He is very unique. As a stamina warden, he actually uses the bear ultimate as well, so he is just all sorts of weird and unique.
He's like a bow brawler pet build.
Bow
Yeah.
brawler pet build. The
Yeah.
character's name is Bear Claw the Nord.
Uh-huh.
So he's very bear themed. He's got a bear mount. He's got the Rothgar bear costume, a bear cub pet. So he has to have the bear ultimate. It just goes into the build. But I really did some tinkering with this build. I thought it would be just kind of an easy, quick change because my plan from the beginning was to use, this was the build I wanted to do Malakath's Band on.
Uh-huh.
Just because, we've talked, Stam Warden doesn't really benefit a whole lot from class passives and things like that with crit. And so this seemed a good one. His crit was pretty low. I think with CP, I think he was like 30%. So it seemed like a really good one to kind of sacrifice that crit.
Yeah.
So the build that that I kind of went with is he's got the Strength of the Automaton set and the Innate Axiom set of those two 5-piece sets. And then I threw the Malakath Band, and so he is kind of this straight all damage. The Automaton set, just all of your physical damage. It gets a 400 weapon damage buff, and then the Innate Axiom is all your class abilities get a 400 weapon damage buff. And to add into more uniqueness with this build is his front bar is the entire animal companion's skills. Every one of them, all the way into the bear ultimate.
And so you get extra damage done just for each one of those slotted as well, right?
Yeah, so you get, the wardens have a passive that for every one of those you have slotted, you get 2% damage bonus. And so he gets 12% damage bonus from that. He gets 25% damage bonus from the Malakath Band. And then both the Automaton and the Axiom, those 400, so that 800 weapon damage applies to that entire front bar because they're class abilities and their physical damage abilities. And since the Warden passive is the Cliff Racer, it kind of allows that bow build because I can still light attack weave at range. And then,
you also have another 8% from Minor Berserk, right? Because don't you have Bird of Prey?
Yep, I have Bird of Prey, so I'm getting another 8% there.
So just all these, like so much. Have you added up, like, wwhat's the total, like, percentage damage done with Malakath and those passives and the Bird of Prey?
I need to add up what all those percentages are. It's a lot. I've tested it out. It's kind of crazy. It's such a weird, unique build, but I have so much fun with it. The overall actual weapon damage number is not that high. I think it's somewhere just under 3,000. But he hits so hard because there's so many percentage buffs that are factoring in. The tooltips
are like super huge.
Yeah, and so I've finished that build just recently towards the end of this week, so I haven't had a whole lot of time to test it. But the little testing I've done, he's hitting really hard. And then the bear pet actually works. Most of the time the bear pet is not a huge PvP used ultimate.
Yeah.
But with all of these buffs that he has, all these sets and everything apply to the bear as well. And so the bear pet actually works really well. I have the morph to where it switches the bear's damage to physical damage. And then when you have the bear pet out there, you can spend, I think it's 70 or 75 ultimate, and he does like a kind of like an execute.
Yeah, it's really hard too, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah, all of these buffs slide over to the bear, and so his actual tooltip for that hit is just under 15,000.
Yeah. Is that without CP?
That's without CP? That's without CP.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
And part of that bear's ability is that if someone's within execute range, I think it's if they're under 25% health. It deals 100% more damage, and so that actual bear ability, if I can utilize it right, or if I find the right person, it is a nasty, nasty hit, and it's only costing me 75 ultimate. So obviously this character is a Nord. I don't do any other characters. So I've always got the ultimate ready to do that ability, and so the bear actually works out really well with this build. And then having it slotted goes into those increased percentages and damage. And so this build is one that this is going to be kind of my the one I'll be playing at least for the next week, maybe more, because I'm really excited. I think the Malakath ban just kind of added even more damage and kind of let the build kind of go even further. For the other one extra piece, I found myself, I usually am using Swarm Mother most of the time with any mythic setup I have, just because the Swarm Mother monster set gives you both Magicka and Stamina. And any Stam Warden extra Magicka is always helpful because he has the
Shimmering Shield.
Shimmering Shield. So he has Shimmering Shield, so that extra Magicka is helpful. And then also their armor buff to get the Major Resolve takes Magicka. So I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be a really fun build. I think it's going to work really well. And I love the fact that it is a heavy armor bow build, just the weirdest setup with a bear pet running around.
I love seeing this character in action because, it's just a normal thing when you see enemies. When an enemy sees you with a bow, like spamming attacks from range with a bow, immediately they think in their mind, there's an easy target. I want to go kill him real quick, get this little bow guy. And then they get there, and it's this heavy armor Nord that is totally ready for action and just like laying all this damage into them, and he's freaking hard as nails to kill. I love it. It's really great.
Yes. And I need to mention too, so in the past with this build, I had done a Sword and Shield back bar. Don't really use any Sword and Shield abilities, but I just kind of done it for extra blocking ability. But I've made a change with this most recent kind of update where I'm actually doing dual wield on the back bar. And I am doing it for the Deadly Cloak ability.
Okay, yeah.
And so essentially, it's nothing huge, but it was kind of nice I had kind of an open slot on my back bar. And so now this just kind of allowed me to use this Deadly Cloak, where it's just a buff that every 1 second, it's a 10-second buff, where every 1 second I'm dealing 1,153 physical damage to all enemies within 5 meters. And so, this is a bow build, but as we've talked, it's a heavy armor bow build. So most of the time I actually am in that range of people because it's kind of a up in your face bow build. And the other great part about this Deadly Cloak, probably even the more effective part, is that you get major evasion for that 10 seconds as well. And so just kind of extra tankiness for this heavy armor bow build.
Yeah, I wonder, have you thought about the Black Rose Prison dual wield? When you use that ability, it gives you extra 6% damage done and 6% damage mitigation. So you could have that just as your back bar weapon and have the other 2 5 pieces on the front bar.
I have thought about that. That's probably something that I might aim for going forward because it would just kind of add just a little extra sauce on top.
Yeah, we should farm that soon. Like normal Black Rose is so easy. We could farm that out really quick and easy.
Yeah, I think that'd be a lot of fun. So overall, I'm very excited with this Stam Warden. I think he's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm excited to kind of finally get into some PvP and some Imperial City with him to see how it goes.
Very cool.
And then lastly, just Imperial City. We're always doing Imperial City every week.
Yep.
I actually missed the Friday night Goon Night last night.
You sure did.
Not by choice. I had some power outages due to storms and things like that. But we still did quite a bit of Imperial City this week. And the one that I wanted to kind of point out is that earlier this week, we did the dual healers in Imperial City.
That was fun.
Oh, man, it was so much fun. So I was on Davius, and you were on your Necromancer healer, Despair, the one that we talked about last week. It was so much fun. we kind of originally did it because there were so many Zergs running around that we just thought we'd just have some fun and kind of joke around.
Yeah, there was nothing we could do with our damage builds, right? Like the Zergs just flattened us at every corner, so we're like, you know what? Let's just go double healer and just troll these dudes. And that's exactly what we did. It was so fun.
Man, it worked out so well. And when we ran into other EP players, it actually worked out really well because as long as they had some damage, we were keeping people alive. Like we were making
nobody was dying. Absolutely. Yeah.
So that was actually a lot of fun, and those were some of the tests that made me realize that Davius's new setup works out really well because we were basically going against massive Zergs.
Yeah.
And it was taking minutes of them just beating on us, trying to take us down.
Yeah, we were straight. Like there were moments. I mean, we were just like wide out in the open, not line of sighting a single thing, just taking it right in the face. You know, we were lasting a while. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that was a fun Imperial City run. That might be something that we have to do every now and then again if the Zergs are out of control in Imperial City.
Yeah, seems to be the norm these days.
Yes.
That Malakath lead up there.
So yeah, that's what I've been up to this week. Just
your week.
Tinkering and updating characters.
Cool. Well, I've been playing some Elder Scrolls Online too.
What? Is there also a dragon in your homeland?
All right. So the build I've really been focused on now that I got my StamPlar finished. We're going to talk about that more here in a minute, but the other build I've really been focused on this week is my Stamina Necromancer, Bobby Bobango.
Oh, Bobby Bobango. That's the best name that just rolls right off the tongue.
It's fun to say. So this guy's a wood elf. He uses a bow on the main front bar and a two-hander on the back bar, just like as a buff bar. And right now he's doing 6 medium, 1 heavy. I'm still kind of experimenting with the different weights and stuff to get my stats where I like them. This build is still very much in the testing phases. I'm still trying different things out. I'm not totally settled on things, but I think I am getting closer to something really good here. So he's probably going to end up using like 3 impen, 4 well fitted, a typical kind of roly-poly sort of setup. It's my style. Well, I think the last time I talked about this build, I was using a Swamp Raider and the Black Rose Prison Bow were the main 2 things I was trying to kind of get good results from. And it does work fairly well, but I felt like it was missing. The damage wasn't quite high enough, basically. There were a lot of fights where I would get people kind of fairly close to death, but not quite there, and they would come back and often, win the fight. So this dude just needs more damage. And I find that's always a challenge with like a bow build. If you're not just a snipe build, just finding that damage can be a challenge. But I'm getting closer. So I think I've decided to move on from Swamp Raider. I'm not going to use that anymore. I still am using the Black Rose Prison Bow because I think this thing is crazy strong. So I think there's some real potential there. But I replaced Swamp Raider with the Poisonous Serpent set, also known as the Venom set. It's from the Hellraw Citadel trial. And if you haven't heard of this set, the 5-piece bonus, when you deal damage with a light or heavy attack against an enemy who has a poison damage ability on them, you have a 50% chance to deal an additional 3,400 poison damage. And that can happen every 1 second. So basically every other light attack weave, you're proccing this thing for 3,400 poison damage. And then as a reminder for the Black Rose Prison Bow, this is the one that makes your scatter shot apply a poison dot for 65% of the initial attack's damage, and it ticks every 2 seconds. So it's a very strong dot. And so that, along with the Poisonous Serpent set, I think that's just some really, really strong damage over time that's happening. I'm also probably going to use an infused, I'm going to make the bow infused and put a poison glyph on it. And poison glyphs on an infused bow, they fire about every other light attack weave as well. And it hits for about the same amount of damage as that Poisonous Serpent set. So it's like both of these things are proccing every other light attack weave, along with that Black Rose Prison Bow ticking away. So I think that's going to be really good. And right now, I also have the Snow Treaders and 3 pieces of Agility Jewelry with a Potentate's Greatsword on the back bar. But again, time for our weekly shout out to Grizzly Khan for giving me
weekly shout out segment. Grizzly Khan.
Yeah, because he gave me an idea for this build that I think I'm really going to try out, and I think it might be really good. So I think I might get rid of the Snow Treaders, get rid of the Agility Jewelry, get rid of the 1-piece Bloodspawn, and replace all of that with 5 pieces of Sheer Venom, which is a set that comes from the Imperial City prison dungeon. And so this set, when you deal damage with an Execute ability, you infect the enemy with 9660 poison damage over 6 seconds. And that can happen every 6 seconds. Now, I've seen this set before, and I've always dismissed it, because I'm like, well, yeah, that's a fairly strong proc, but, you know, I have to hit them with an Execute ability, and I'm only doing that when they're in Execute range, so there's a lot of the time I'm not getting this proc. But what Grizzly Khan pointed out is that Poison Injection, the bow dot, that counts as an Execute ability. And even though you hit someone when they're not in Execute range, you still are hitting them with an Execute ability. And so it procs this set here. And so if you're using a bow ability and you have Poison Injection, then this is actually a really great, really strong proc set. So I think I'm going to farm this out and try pairing it up with this Poisonous Serpent and the Black Rose Prism Bow and the infused Poison Glyph. I think all together it's going to be just a whole lot of poison damage, not to mention the actual just abilities that I'm casting, my Blast Wounds and my Poison Skull and all that stuff.
This is such a cool... I love how poison themed this build is, especially with seeing the character. Bobby Bobango is just this little tiny gremlin... looking character, and just the fact that he is just throwing all this poison out there, it's such a cool idea for a build, and he's going to be quick and rolling all around, and just and boy, the poor werewolves that come across old Bobby.
Well, I mean, somebody's going to counter the werewolves, man. They are rising. I guess that's something we could talk about really quick, is that I think a couple episodes ago we were talking about, like, I'm surprised at how few werewolves, they got buffed, and there really seems to not really be that many. And then we were like, oh, I think as time goes on, people will catch on, and we'll start seeing more werewolves.
It's all these players listening to the podcast. They heard us say it. Now everybody's making werewolves.
Yeah, it has happened, man. The Werewolf Wreckoning is here. I've seen some really, really nasty werewolves. There's this one werewolf. I got to tell this story really quick. It's another Imperial City story. There was this one werewolf straight up 1vxing this semi-Zerg Ebonheart Pact. It was all friendlies. And so the werewolf, I guess he was getting low in resources or something, so he broke away from the fight. He was running away, and I decided I'm going to go chase him down and 1v1 him. He's probably low in resources, so maybe I can take him out. I chased him down. It was just me and him, and man... this dude absolutely wrecked me. Afterwards, he whispered me and said, "Wrecked." And I whispered him back and said, "Indeed, good sir."
Indeed.
It was nasty, man. There's some really, really nasty werewolves out there.
We actually are at risk right now, too, because we have always played with the style that anytime we're in a PvP environment, as soon as that werewolf pops up, we have always gravitated towards, okay, stop what we're doing. We're going to go take this werewolf out.
Focus the werewolf.
That's what we've always done. And now that is a very dangerous play style. Because these werewolves, like you said, they are a force to be reckoned with right now.
They can be totally vicious. I'm not sure what the kind of the popular build setup is for them right now. I just know I've seen a lot of really good ones. Mm-hmm. Mostly in Imperial City. I honestly still am not seeing a ton of them in Battlegrounds, and I'm wondering if they tend to perform better with CP versus without, or whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
What was I talking about?
we were talking about Bobby.
I was talking about my Stamina Necromancer. So that's the build idea. And related to that, I want to talk about my experience farming out this Venomous Serpent set. So it comes from Hellra Citadel, which is one of the Craglorn 12-player trials. And I've always shied away from farming gear from trials because I've always figured it's hard to find groups. That's not part of the group finder, and it's just going to be a big pain to try to farm that out. So I'm just not going to bother trying to get trial gear. But I wanted to try this set out so bad that I overcame that anxiety, and I poured it into Craglorn. And for a while, my strategy was basically just to chill out, sip some coffee, and just keep my eyes on zone chat, and wait for somebody to say, "Hey, looking for people to join group for Hellraw Citadel." And so luckily, eventually that did happen. Somebody was calling out in zone chat and putting a group together. I whispered them, they invited me, and we did it. And that was cool. But then after that, that strategy of mine stopped working. Nobody was putting together any more Hellraw Citadel groups. So I typed in zone chat, LFG, DPS, HRC, right? Nobody would whisper me. And I would do that a few more times. I still wasn't getting any bites whatsoever. So eventually I decided, okay, my approach thus far has been, I want to join a group. Now I'm gonna change my approach, and I'm going to form a group. I'm the leader, and I'm going to be the one doing the inviting. And so this was the change that needed to happen. It changed everything. Just from changing my wording in zone chat, I had a full trial group together in about 10 minutes, and we were doing runs.
Wow.
So all I did is I just said need members for I was just doing normal. So need members for normal HRC all roles. And someone whispered me right away. I invited them. And then just each time I would get someone. So say like I got a tank. And so like, okay, now I need 2 healers and a bunch of DPS. So I was like, all right, looking for members, 2 healers, 10 DPS, Hellraw Citadel. And just each time I would get members, I would update those numbers in the zone chat, just telling people who I needed. And I think people seeing that number go down time after time after time, they're saying, okay, this is really happening. And so more and more people were jumping in. I was getting whisper after whisper after whisper of people like ready to go. So I guess this is my story, is just like a lesson. And I don't know anything about these trials, by the way. Like, I'm not fit to be a raid leader. This is like maybe the second time I'd ever done this trial before. But on normal, it's so easy anyway. And most of the time, the people that are joining up with you, they've done it lots of times. They know exactly what to do. So you don't necessarily have to be an expert. So yeah, just take that approach. If you're ever trying to get a trial group together, be the leader, be the one doing the inviting, and kind of take that approach. You'll get a lot more responses from people than if you're trying to join an existing group. Because most people are doing that same thing. Most people are waiting for someone to take the lead. That's what everyone's doing.
Yeah, I think that's pretty huge because talking about that kind of trial anxiety. So here's my silent shame. I have never done a trial in ESO.
Oh, we got to get you in some trials, man.
But I think that's the huge part, is what you talk about, is that, kind of that trial anxiety is that, I want this set from the trial, and you're like, oh man, getting all those people together. Or if you're not really part of like a guild that's running regular trials, or even if you are, a lot of times if you're a part of those guilds that run regular trials, they kind of already have a set group put together. So if you're not originally part of that original group that's doing it, trying to get into the group is kind of difficult.
Yeah, or they have a schedule. Maybe that schedule doesn't work for you as well.
Yep,
like
if the schedule doesn't work out. And so kind of exactly what you said, I've kind of always just avoided trials. So to hear how easy and how well it went for you, like, that is really refreshing to hear. That actually kind of just changes my stance. Like, maybe I'll start actually going back and looking at the trial sets again. Maybe trying to actually farm some of those sets that I've always kind of looked at as, well, that's in a trial, I'm not going to be able to get it. That kind of opens those doors. That's really refreshing to hear.
Yeah, and the normal trials are very easy, just like normal dungeons are very easy. And a lot of people are willing to do normal trials, because a lot of them are just like us. They just want the gear. They don't want to spend hours, grinding away this difficult content. So a lot of people actually prefer to do the normal versions. So yeah, just go with that approach, man. If you're trying to farm some gear, just go to Craglor, and that's the place to go to find trial groups. And just start inviting people. Just start advertising and telling Zone Chat what you need, and they'll hit you up. So that's mostly what I've been up to this week. Why don't we take a quick break and then we'll come back and we have another build spotlight we're going to get into this week. So we'll be right back. To continue the saga of my stamina Templar, last week I explained why I put the build video up the week before, and then I took it back down because I came up with a much better version. Well, now that much better version is complete, and so we're ready to do this build spotlight for real this time. For real this time.
It's finalized.
This is my revised StamPlar build for the Greymoor patch. It still has the same focus on high mobility, sustain, and damage as before. The playstyle hasn't changed at all. It's just now the damage is so much more. So this video is just going to cover the non-CP setup, but I'll also put links in the description for the CP setup as well as an alternative non-mythic gear selection. The race is an orc mainly for the extra movement speed and cost reduction for sprinting, and I'm using the Serpent Mundus for extra stamina recovery. For the food, I'm using Dubious Cameron Throne for even more stamina recovery, and for the potions, I'm using standard tri-stat potions. For the stats, I'll put a link in the description to the UESP build, so just click on whichever version of the build you want to see, and you'll see the stats there. So for the gear, I'm using 5 pieces Bone Pirate, 5 pieces Deadly Strikes on the front bar with a Master Bow on the back bar, Ring of the Wild Hunt, and 1 piece Bloodspawn. All 7 pieces are medium because my max stats are already in a pretty comfortable spot, and so rather than trying to maximize the Undaunted Metal passive, I'd rather get the most out of my medium armor passives, such as more crit, better sustain, better mobility. And for the traits, for the armor traits, I'm using 3 Impen, 4 Well Fitted. Remember, we have additional crit resist added to our character's base stats this patch, so we can easily get away with just 3 Impen and have all the crit resist we need. And that 4 Well Fitted is really nice for the cost reduction on roll dodge and sprint. That's on top of our orc passives that gives us extra sprint cost reduction, and our medium armor passives that gives us extra roll dodge cost reduction. So all around, we can be very mobile, and we're really not spending a lot of stamina for it. Bone Pirate's a nice set. It just gives us a nice amount of max stamina as well as stamina recovery. You have to use a drink buff in order for this set to work, so you want to stick with Dubious Cameron Throne most likely, and that'll give you a whole bunch of stamina and stamina recovery. This set drops in Blackheart Haven, which is one of the vanilla dungeons. It's pretty easy farm. And then Deadly Strikes. So this set is basically the meta for Stamina Templars. Often the reason I'm trying to avoid meta sets is because it conflicts with a certain kind of play style that I'm going for. But I actually can use this set, this patch, and totally not have to sacrifice my preferred play style at all. So this buffs the damage to our jabs by 20%, and if you've played a StamPlar before, you know that basically all of your damage comes from jabs. So just a straight 20% increase to jabs is a huge increase to our overall damage. And this set comes from one of the Cyrodiil vendors, so it's really easy to get a hold of. You can usually find it for pretty cheap at guild traders. Using 1 piece Bloodspawn for just a little bit of extra stamina recovery, and this can definitely be a flex spot. For example, you could use Molag Kenna for extra weapon damage if you don't feel like you need the recovery. So just whatever you think feels good there. And then I'm using the new Ring of the Wild Hunt mythic item, and this gives us an extra 15% movement speed at all times during combat. So that's basically equivalent to 3 Swift jewelry traits. So we don't have to use Swift at all in our jewelry. We can just go all infused on all 3 jewelry pieces, except I actually still am running 1 Swift because I haven't transmuted the Wild Hunt ring yet, but I do recommend going all infused just to get the most out of those glyphs there, and you're still going to have all the speed you need. And then for my front bar weapon, I'm using a sharpened Deadly Strikes Maul with a Crusher enchantment. And then on the back bar, I have an infused Master Bow with a weapon damage enchantment. And so Deadly Strikes is not active on the back bar, just on the front bar. But we only really need it to be active on the front bar because we just need it to empower those jabs. And so the Master Bow, this thing is pretty awesome. It gives you 330 weapon damage against targets that are affected with your poison injection. And that's on top of the 450 weapon damage we get from that infused weapon damage glyph. So just hitting someone with your poison injection gives you an additional 780 weapon damage against that target. And then, of course, our jabs is being increased by 20% from our Deadly Strikes set. So we hit them with the poison injection, then we swap to the front bar and start jabbing them, and it's just an overall ton of damage coming at them. And also remember that the Dragonstar Arena, you can do this on normal now and get the non-perfected version of this bow, which is exactly what I did. It's incredibly easy. It only takes 4 people to do it. And, just use that same tactic that I was talking about earlier. Just go into Craglorn, ask Zone Chat for people to join your group. People will jump right in there, no problem, because lots of people are farming for these weapons. It's really, really easy to get a hold of. But if for some reason you can't get a hold of a Master Bow or you just don't feel like doing it, you could just use Deadly Strikes on both bars. That would be totally fine. Or another option would be a Potentate's Bow on the back bar for a little extra damage mitigation. So we'll talk about the skill bars. For my main spammable, of course, I'm using Biting Jabs. I'm also using Power of the Light, Binding Javelin, Rally, Repentance, and the Crescent Sweep Ultimate. And on the back bar, I'm using Razor Caltrops, Extended Ritual, Poison Injection, Restoring Focus, Resolving Vigor, and the Reviving Barrier Ultimate. So let's back up and talk about Repentance for a second. I think this ability is one of the keys to success for this build. It is free to cast. You can use it to drain nearby corpses to restore health and stamina. And this ability really enables you to stay bold, stay aggressive, because we know that if we get that kill, we'll be rewarded with that health and stamina return. So it can often be worth taking that risk, and it also allows us to sacrifice a little bit of sustain in favor of more damage in our build. Because again, we know that we'll use that damage to get more kills, and we'll get compensated for that sustain afterwards.
Such a huge key component from going from fight to fight. Usually if you're in a really tough fight and your resources are down, then it can really be a risk jumping into another fight. But like you said, just jumping from fight to fight without any downtime.
Oh yeah, and in Battlegrounds, I mean, this thing comes in clutch so many times. There are so many times where you'll walk up on a scene and there are 4 dead bodies on the ground, and your stamina bar goes from 0 to 100 all of a sudden, plus a huge burst heal at the same time.
Yep.
There are so many times that there just so happens to be these bodies around in a time when you really need them, and it comes in so clutch in those moments. And then the Crescent Sweep Ultimate, this is the Magicka morph rather than the Stamina morph. Even though this is a StamPlar, the Magicka morph still does more damage, and especially in no CP, it definitely does way more damage. Even with CP, I still prefer this ability. I think it hits a little harder, it's a little more bursty. Also want to talk about Extended Ritual. This is an AoE heal over time and a cleanse. And this is also our one and only Magicka ability. I've talked about this before. I think this is one of StamPlar's biggest advantages. They have very little reliance on Magicka because they typically only use one Magicka ability. Although there are some StamPlars that use Toppling Charge, that's a different story. But this build, it's just using Extended Ritual.
Also, kind of just what you said with Toppling Charge, I think it's used to point out, going back in this build, with the speed and the agility of this ability, you really don't need Gap Closer because you're going to outrun almost anybody that's trying to run from you.
Yeah, I generally use Roll Dodge as my Gap Closer because with all the cost reduction, Roll Dodge costs so little, and it gives a major expedition right afterwards, so I can cover a really huge distance in a short amount of time for very low cost. So yeah, I don't find much value in a Gap Closer in this build. And then Poison Injection. This is an extremely important ability. So it procs our Master Bow for that extra 330 weapon damage against that target. It also procs our infused weapon damage glyph for a combined total of 780 weapon damage against that target. So this is where a massive, massive chunk of our damage comes from. And it's also actually a decent ranged, spammable, and execute as well. If you see someone that's kind of far away. You can't quite get to them. Sometimes you can just spam this ability at them a couple of times and get that kill. So as far as the strategy goes, what you want to do is try to keep your caltrops and extended ritual on the ground as much as possible. Be sure and keep rally and restoring focus active at all times as well. And then for your combo, try to make your enemy stand in your caltrops, then hit them with your poison injection, then swap to the front bar and tag them with your power of the light, then hit them with your crescent sweep ultimate, stun them with your javelin, then lay into them with your jabs. And I want to note that it's important to keep in mind that this is just an example of how your combo could go. It's important to change things up and not do it the exact same way every time, because good players are going to pick up on that pattern very quickly, and then they're just going to dodge or block your javelin every time and generally just make it difficult for you to land your combo the way you want to. So, I think opening up with caltrops, poison injection, and power of the light, you can pretty much do those the same every single time. But then after that, you kind of want to mix up your javelin, jabs, and crescent sweep so that you can be unpredictable and stun them when they're not expecting it. So you kind of have to do a little bit of front bar jazz with that. Also, keep in mind that with this build, your primary advantage is mobility and your biggest weakness is resistance. So you definitely want to utilize that movement that the Wild Hunt Ring is giving you, because that is your primary defense. So you want to employ hit and run tactics. You want to use line of sight, get your kills quickly, and then get back on the move as quickly as you can. Did you have anything else you wanted to talk about before we close out the episode?
I don't think so. We're starting a streak the other way now with no emails or comments. So
yeah.
We gotta get back on our email and comments streak going.
Yeah, so no emails this week, and just the one shout out to GrizzlyCon for giving me the build idea. We'll see how that goes. But if anyone would like to get a hold of us, you can email scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. That's scrolling with an I-N, no G, scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. If you have any questions or feedback you'd like to give us, any corrections, any funny jokes, you just want to say, hey, what's up? Anything like that, feel free to go ahead and email us. You can also contact us in game. I'm at Kevin Sparrowhawk. Davius is at Starjumper. Just say hello. Ask us if you want to be invited to the Stoons Goons, our guild. You can get you in there. We'll take you on a goon night in Imperial City, get you your free set of Stoons favor, all that good stuff. What else?
I think that's about everything.
I think that is a podcast episode. We are going to call it right there. Thank you very much for listening.